Good afternoon. I hope everybody's staying warm today. It's kind of rainy and chilly here. And, you know, 1st of April is just around the corner and we're trying to prepare for Easter. As you can see right here behind me, we're going to be making this cute little basket, Easter basket, for the little ones to be able to go, you know, collect their Easter eggs on their Easter egg hunt. If your area is doing them, it's very a simple project, can be done within an hour to 2 hours, and it takes very minimal material. As you can see here, you ain't gonna need very much. You will need a fat quarter for your applique pieces if you choose to do fat quarters. You'll need some lining fabric, and I'm just using white for this one. This one I used a striped one. I don't know if you can, there you go, striped color. And this one I'm also using just plain purple as my outside fabric. You'll need some cutters. I have a rotary blade, regular fabric cutters, and then I have what we call snippets. They're just little pointy scissors to be able to cut your threads from your sewing machine. You will also need, whether it be fusible, fleece, or batting. I'm just using batting because I'm using everything out of my stash. This is a great stash buster. You can make these also for with or without the handle to, you know, have storage baskets. So, you know, you can, they're very versatile. You'll need pins or wonder clips. I'm using straight pins today. I also use a friction pin, and then I also have some 505 temporary adhesive because my batting is not fusible. So if you're using fusible, you don't need the temporary adhesive. And then of course your cutting mats, an iron with an ironing mat. So to get started, you'll need to cut your batting, your lining fabric, your main fabric, all 9 inches by 22.5. The 22.5 cannot change unless you change the circle. But you can make them as tall or as shallow as you want. The one we're making today is 8 inches. These are 9 inches. And then you'll need to cut 2 circles out of fabric and 1 out of your batting that is 7.5 inches diameter. So being 7.5 inches diameter makes it so the 22.5 inches go perfect around it. That's why the 22.5 inches cannot be changed. So, and then if you're adding the handle, you'll need another piece of fabric, and this is just fabric that I'm using for another basket that I'm making for the grandkids. It needs to be 2.5 by 18 inches. So I just took a jelly roll and found fabric that would match the basket that I'm making, and I cut it to 18 inches, sorry. And then you'll also need some batting that is 3/4 of an inch by 18. And so I just cut 2 pieces out of that, what was left, and I'm just going to butt them up for the handle. So I'll show you that when we get there. And then you'll need your design for your applique. So on this one, I have a peep, we have some eggs, and then we have a bunny. But on this one we're doing today, all I'm doing is eggs. I had this fabric that had these cute little bunny faces, and so I fussy cut the egg shape around each of them so they each have a little face. So you'll need your applique if you choose to do the applique, and we'll get to that point here in a minute. So to get started, we're going to lay our batting down, and then we're going to take our outer fabric, not the lining fabric, the outer fabric, and I'm just laying it on top of my batting. Now, if you were using your fusible fleece, you would just iron this down. But because I'm not, I'm just getting it out there. I'm going to fold it over, and we're just going to take the 505, and I'm just going to spray a little bit on there and bring my fabric back over and press it down. That's just going to temporarily hold it there for me to be able to do the sewing on it. I'm just going to do the other side. You're going to do the exact same thing with one of your circles, your fabric circles. And your batting. So you have a piece of your circle fabric around, and then it's adhered to the batting. So that's the first step. Then we're going to take our applique, and you're going to cut them out. I used my cutting machine to cut out the egg shape on paper for this one, but I cut the fabric of the shapes and the bunny out on my machine. So there's a couple ways that you could adhere your applique. You can get Heat and Bond Light or Heat and Bond Ultra Hold. So the Heat and Bond Light, which is the purplish color here, you have to sew around. So that's what I did on this one. I did a basket stitch around each shape, and I will add in a clip of showing you how I did that. When sewing your applique, just take your time, go slow, slowly move your fabric around the curves, and it will line up just right. Just take your time. But I just went around each of them with a basket stitch. If you want to use your machine and you want to do it by hand, you adhere this to your fabric, and then you just do the basket stitch by hand. Today we're using the Heat and Bond Ultra, which is the red package. And with the red package, you don't, it's a no sew. So we're just going to put it on, lay it out, and then iron down. And then we don't have to do any of the stitching around it. It's going to be permanently attached for me. Now this basket I'm using myself, so that's why I'm using this. It will, just be to me will be just fine enough. For the kids, I recommend using the sew one just to adhere it a little more, because you know they're going to be using it more wear and tear on it than per se I will having it sitting on a shelf. So you cut out your shape of the heat and bond and of your fabric. You iron it on with the paper backing. And then we'll just peel the backing off. It's just a paper back, and you'll be able to see a shiny adhesive onto the back of your fabric. I don't know if you can see that very well, but it, you know, it's really shiny. And then you just kind of lay them out on your fabric. So I'm just going to peel these real fast. If you want these shapes or want a pattern for the shapes, or would like the shapes pre-cut out and adhered to the heat and bond, comment below in the comment section, and or send me a message, and I'll be glad to you know, create them for you guys and put in my Etsy shop for you. Okay. And once I have the backs all peeled, I'm just kind of roughly laying them down. When I did the other basket, I made sure to have them an inch from the edge where we're going to sew, and about 2 inches up. So I'm just kind of using my cutting mat on the bottom, just kind of rough guessing where they're, and then I just eyeball per se where I want them aligned up. You don't have to be rocket scientist to you know, to add the applique. Okay. And I'm just kind of evenly spacing them apart. And then I'm going to take some wax paper and put over the top. That is just to protect my mat. If you have a silicone mat, you can use that as well. I just use some wax paper. And then I'm just going to hold it for like 5 seconds to make sure on each egg, to make sure they're nice and adhered. And depending on what fabric you're using, when you adhere your batting to your fabric, you want to make sure that there's no strings or anything underneath there. If you're using like a light color fabric, you'll be able to see them strings. So you want to make sure that they're not visible. So now I'm just going to let them cool, and there is our bunny applique onto our bag. And I use 7 of them. I did cut out 8, but we just used 7. We're going to put right sides together, and we're going to pin this. This is where you can use some wonder clips. I'm just using straight pins, and I put about 4 in there just to hold it down while I'm sewing. We don't want any of it sliding around. And while I get ready to sew this, I'm going to take the lining fabric, and I'm going to put right sides together and pin it as well, so that I can just sew both of them right down, as we call a chain stitching in quilting. It helps save on thread, and stuff is when you change stitch. So I'm just using my Singer sewing machine, and we are just using a regular straight stitch, and we're doing about a 5/8 seam allowance. A good tip that I have found when using the batting is to start a little bit off the edge, sew a couple stitches, and then back stitch, and then come back forward. The reason why is that keeps it from getting pushed down into the foot at the bottom of your machines. So we're just going to sew this real fast. 3/8 seam allowance. And when you're stitching your applique on, and if you have like the shapes, just go nice and slow, taking your time to curve around those edges. You don't have to be in no big hurry to, get around them. So I back stitched here. I'm leaving that on the machine, and I'm just going to pick up the lining fabric and just slide right in there and start continuous sewing without cutting my thread. Back stitching once again in the beginning and the end. Then we'll just take our snippets and cut the thread in between. And remember to cut the threads. And then we'll just take our our ironing mat. And I just like to open it up. And then we're just going to iron this seam open. That will help with some bulk when we get ready to do the next step. We're going to do the same thing on the lining. We're going to set the lining aside. And then we're going to take our outside fabric and then our circle that has the batting. I fold the circle in half just to kind of get me a start point here. I'm going to take that point, put right sides together, and put it right with that seam. And we're going to pin. This is where wonder clips would come in handy to hold it, but you will need a lot of them. And then you're just going to slowly take your time, rotate these around, and add pins. You're just lining up the edge. So I just take and rotate the circle to match up. And you can see I'm putting pins every 1/2 inch to 1 inch around, and you'll just keep on rotating around, lining up those edges. So I'm going to go pin this so you don't have to watch me pin it all. I'll be back at the sewing machine getting ready to sew it. Okay. Welcome back. You can see how many pins I used around there. So take your time, make sure you line up all the edges and use as many pins as you feel comfortable with to make sure that you get every layer in there. Now we're going to take it to the sewing machine, and I like to squish it down. I'm going to do it so the bottom part of the bag is facing up, and I just squish it down. And we're going to do it, make sure that the bag is folded out way so we don't get that sewn in. And I'm going to sew the 3/8 seam allowance and just take my time going around the whole curve. Rotating the bag and bottom part as I go, making sure no lumps get in there. We're just gonna slowly go around. Like I said, take your time to go around the curves. It's not a race. I put my needle down so I can be able to rotate this around and get all of that out from underneath so it lays flat. So you may have to do it a couple times, but you just want to keep rotating and laying flat. Just so, like I said, you don't want to sew this part of your bag because it got pushed up under there. Although we have a motto here that it's not a completed project unless you pulled out the seam ripper at least once. So hopefully I can finish the project without pulling out the seam ripper. And I'm just using a regular sewing needle. I think it's a 10, 12. Made it around, we'll back stitch. And we'll cut off our thread. I like to look on both sides, make sure I got all of the fabric in. We'll actually turn it right side here and double check as well. Make sure we got all of the fabric in that seam. You can press it if you'd like. I just kind of finger press the seam out with my finger and just, you know, kind of squeeze it down. I do not heat iron it, but you can. And now we're going to do the same thing with our lining. We are going to take the fabric that don't have the batting on it. We're going to find the center piece. And we're going to line it up with that seam. And pin it and then sew it around just like we did. You want to make sure that the right sides are together. This don't have as much bulk, so it's a little easier. But once again, take your time, put as many pins in to line those up. I will go and come back once I'm done sewing this and we're ready for the next step. Okay, welcome back. We have the lining pinned or sewn, and we have the outside sewn, and I did fix a section where I missed the seam, so it's all ready to go. So we're gonna have the bag turned out, and then the lining, it's gonna stay wrong side. But make sure you got all those edges. Like I said, the lining's a lot easier to sew. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna fold this down. I just kind of eyeball it about 3/8 to a 1/2 inch, and I'm gonna pin it. And I'm gonna leave my pins out pretty far because I'm going to iron it, but I like to pin it just to make, you know, you could get out your hem measure your tape measure and measure, but I'm just eyeballing it. Just roughly whatever you fold down on the lining, we're going to do the exact same thing on the bag, the outside of it. And then you're just going to iron it down and make a crease, a nice hem. I guess you don't have to iron if you don't want to. It's your preference, I guess. I like to, you know, just lay it out and give it just a little press on them. Make sure not to get your pin heads because they'll melt, but just a little press. It just helps when putting the bag together to be able to line up a little easier. We're going to set that one aside. We're going to do the same thing to the bag, but we're going to fold inwards roughly that same amount. We're going to pin, and then we're going to give it a good iron to help hold that hem down. And the only reason you're folding it to the 3/8 to 1/2 inch down is to make sure when you do the top stitching that we're going to do here when we attach the handle, if you're doing a handle, to make sure that you catch the folded edge down to make it a finished edge. You could trim some of your batting away if you would like, so it's not as bulky when you're folding over. But that, once again, that's your your preference. If you don't think that your machine or needle can handle it, you can trim it away. Okay, now that we got it all pinned, we're just going to pull it flat. Just give it a good press on the edge just to help hold it down. And then we're going to set it aside. Well, you can actually put your lining in there. To put your lining in, you want to take your seam and match up with your other seam and just kind of push it down into your bag, but you want to make sure that the seams are right there together. And then we're just going to set this aside for the moment, because now we're going to work on the handle. If you choose to put a handle, this handle is not going to go on this bag. That bag is not going to have a handle. It's just going to be like a storage container. But I'm showing you how to do the handle. So you just take, it's 2.5 by 18. I just took a jelly roll. I folded it in half and I pressed it. And then now what we're going to do is take the ends and fold it over about 1/4 inch. And iron it to give it a crease. And I just fold as I press along. And that's just going to help give the handle a finished edge. And then we'll set our mat away. Okay, then we're going to take our strip that we cut. This could be, it's 3/4 by 18. And like I said, I just using 2 pieces because I'm trying to use up some scraps. It'll work just the same. Okay, so I'm going to, the 505 adhesive, unless you're using fusible fleece, and I'm just putting it in above the center crease that we have. And then I'm going to butt this end up against that end and continue to, and if you stretch it and you got a little extra, just cut it off. And then I'm going to spray down this side and fold it over, making sure to get up all of those, you know, the fold to the fold. It's just going to hold it while we stitch this down. So when we stitch, we're going to stitch the open edge down, then we're going to stitch down the other side, and then you can also do a stitch down the middle. You can pin this if you need to pin it, you know, make sure all the edges stay in. I'm just going to start to sew, and I'm doing about 1/8 of an inch stitch, very as close to the edge as you can get. That's just going to help lock down the raw edge. And get that batting in there. Okay, I stitched down this one side. I'm not going to back stitch. I'm not going to cut my thread. I'm just going to pull it out, flip it around, and do the other side. I'm not back stitching on either end because it's going to get attached into the hemline, the seam. At this point, you can do a stitch down the middle if you want. I'm just going to do down the two sides. So now what we'll need to do is pin our bag. So we're going to find those edges, and I'm going to line them up, and we're going to pin. And you're going to do that all the way around. You can put as many pins as you need. Your wonder clips would be great here. I'm just lining up both the folded areas at the top. And just keep on going around, making sure, you know, you keep it folded down. That's why I iron it, just to make sure it stays down. Now, once you got your bag pretty much pinned into place here, you can figure out where you want your handles. So on the basket behind me, what I did, let's see, that's bubbling up right there. So I'm going to add another pin in there to help hold that down when I'm sewing it. So what I did is folded my bag in half from the hem line or the seam line to here, and found where the bag is in half. I brought them together so that the handles can be here, and then you just tuck your handle in and pin it, and then bring it around to the other side, tuck it in and pin it to make, you know, and I have it down to where the fold line is. So then when you do this top stitch, it's going to attach that handle. And then when you, reinforce the handle, I would go across back and forth several times over the handle, because that's going to put a lot of strain on your basket. But we're not putting a handle on this one, so I'll just set that aside. And what I do is I take my tray off of my sewing machine, so then I can just put my bag in, like, so that I can just sew right around. And I'm doing, once again, just a 1/8 of a stitch, 1/8 inch. And I'm going to sew all the way around the upper edge, giving it a top stitch here. Going back and forth in the beginning and ending, just to make sure that that stays together. And I like using, without that, when I'm doing a circle, because I can just, you know, just rotate it around. And I'm going to take extra caution going over this, where the hems meet the seams, because it is extra bulky. Just go nice and slow, and it goes right over it. And there is your finished basket. You can put, you know, grass in there, whatever you would per se like. Here's the one with the handle. Without the handle, you can, you know, if you used a decorative lining and didn't have the applique on the outside, you can, you know, fold your bag down like that and give it, you know, a, if you use solid, you know, fabric. I'm thinking it'd be cute if you took a little pom-pom and glued and sewn right on the bunny's tail. But a cute, customizable, one-of-a-kind Easter basket or storage container, storage basket for any holiday. If you like what you saw, please subscribe, like, and comment below. And be sure to share with your friends if you think that they might enjoy and be able to create a cute little basket like this. Tag me on social media to, I'd love to see what kind of designs you guys make. And I will see you